You get up from the couch and walk to the kitchen. Your dog gets up and walks to the kitchen. You pour a glass of water, change your mind, and walk back to the living room. Your dog walks back to the living room. You stop at the hallway for no particular reason. Your dog stops at the hallway. They are not asking for anything. They are not distressed. They are not waiting for something specific to happen. They are simply maintaining a distance from you that suggests they have decided on an optimal radius, and they are enforcing it with quiet, unbroken dedication. Most people call this clinginess. Some call it separation anxiety. A few call it flattering. But animal cognition researchers who have spent the last 2 decades studying this exact behavior have arrived at a description that sounds like none of those things. And once you hear it, that dog moving room to room behind you starts to look like something else entirely. The anxiety explanation seems reasonable on its face. A dog who cannot let you out of their sight must be worried about losing you. The affection explanation seems reasonable too. The dog loves you and wants to be near you. Both of these contain real elements, but here's the problem. They describe the outcome, not the mechanism. They tell you what the behavior looks like from the outside without explaining what is driving it from the inside. And the researchers who have actually looked at the inside have found something considerably more specific and considerably more interesting than either of those explanations accounts for. Researchers at the Duke Canine Cognition Center have spent years studying how dogs process information about the humans they live with. One consistent finding across multiple experiments is this: dogs orient toward the humans they are bonded with, not randomly, not out of social generality, but specifically in response to information. When something is uncertain, when an unfamiliar object appears in the environment, when a sound occurs without an obvious source, when a situation develops in a way the dog cannot immediately categorize, the dog looks to the owner. Not to any human present, to that specific person. What the research shows is that your dog has identified you as a primary source of reliable, actionable information about the world they share with you. And the room-to-room following is, in part, a positioning strategy. To consult you when something needs interpreting, you have to be visible. Your dog is maintaining continuous access to their most trusted information source. A study conducted by researchers at the University of Portsmouth added a precise behavioral layer to this. The team presented 79 dogs with ambiguous situations, novel objects placed in familiar spaces, unexpected sounds, unfamiliar people approaching at a distance, and tracked what the dogs did in the moments after the initial response. The finding was consistent across the sample. Dogs turned to look at their owner within the first few seconds of encountering something uncertain. And then, critically, they adjusted their subsequent behavior based on what the owner's face and posture communicated. A calm, neutral expression from the owner and the dog approached or investigated. A tense or negative expression, and the dog withdrew. The dog was not just glancing at the owner, they were reading the owner and using that reading as the primary input for deciding what to do next. Researchers call this social referencing, and it requires physical proximity to function. A dog that cannot see you cannot reference you. Every time your dog follows you to a new room, they are maintaining the conditions under which the system can operate. But here is where it gets really interesting, because the following is not only reactive, it is also predictive. Your dog has spent months or years building a detailed behavioral model of you. They know which of your movements tend to produce interesting outcomes. The reach toward the coat hook, the specific cadence of keys being gathered, the sound of the refrigerator opening at a particular time of day. Research on canine attention and learning from the University of Vienna found that dogs living in stable home environments develop what the researchers described as event predictive attention, a pattern of orienting toward the person most reliably associated with meaningful changes in their environment. In households with more than one person, this almost always maps onto one individual. Not necessarily the person who is most affectionate, the person whose behavior most consistently predicts something worth paying attention to, who opens the back door, who reaches for the lead, whose movements most reliably precede a walk, a meal, or a change in the day. When that person moves, it is worth following. Because their movement is data. There is also a layer to this that goes deeper than learning. In 2017, researchers at Princeton University identified structural variants in specific genes found in domestic dogs that are absent in wolves. What was remarkable about the discovery was not simply that the variants existed, but where else they appeared. In humans, differences in the same genomic region are associated with a syndrome called Williams-Buren syndrome, characterized by a compulsive drive towards social connection and an almost complete absence of the wariness that keeps most animals at a careful distance from unfamiliar individuals. The dogs carrying these variants were not just friendlier than wolves in a general sense, they were specifically and measurably more oriented toward human contact, more attentive to human faces, and more likely to seek proximity with people even in the absence of any food reward or training. A separate line of genetic research examining the oxytocin receptor gene in domestic dogs compared to their wolf relatives found that dogs showed significantly higher receptor density in regions of the brain associated with social bonding and approach behavior. The genetic architecture of your dog's brain was literally built to find nearness to humans rewarding. Not neutral, not tolerable, rewarding. The following behavior, the gravitational pull your dog feels when you move through the house, is not primarily a product of how they were raised or trained. At a measurable genetic level, it is part of what dogs are. The result of thousands of years of selection not for any working ability, but specifically for the drive to stay near humans and to find that nearness rewarding. A 2024 study from the Clever Dog Lab in Vienna added a dimension to this that changes the picture of following behavior in unfamiliar environments specifically. The research team found that dogs in novel settings would copy their bonded humans' movement patterns, including unnecessary steps that the dogs themselves already knew were inefficient rather than take a shorter, independent route to the same goal. They were not doing this because they lacked the ability to navigate. They did it even in cases where they had already demonstrated they knew the more efficient path. In a new environment with unclear rules, the most reliable strategy available to the dog was to do what the person who knew the space did. Following in those conditions is not emotional dependence. It is intelligent uncertainty management. It is the behavior of an animal that has correctly identified that staying close to a more informed partner is a better navigation strategy than independent exploration. Most dogs who follow their owners everywhere are entirely fine, but there is one distinction worth understanding because it matters for how you interpret the behavior. In 26, researchers at Tufts University School of Veterinary Medicine found something that surprised veterinary behaviorists at the time. Dogs with clinically diagnosed separation anxiety did not spend significantly more time near their owners at home compared to dogs without it. Following behavior and separation anxiety are not the same thing, and the presence of one does not confirm the presence of the other. The line between a Velcro dog and a dog with a clinical problem is actually quite specific once you know where to look. A dog who follows out of preference can settle when they catch up to you. They can stay in another room, and after a moment of adjustment, they are fine. The following is a choice available to them, and when the choice is temporarily removed, they adjust. A dog with a clinical issue cannot disengage. The urgency does not settle when proximity is achieved. The anxiety is present even during brief separations of seconds, and it does not reduce, it compounds. These are two different things, operating in two different nervous systems, with different causes and requiring different responses. There are also physical reasons a dog might begin following more intensely that have nothing to do with attachment or anxiety, and everything to do with how they feel physically. A dog who suddenly increases their shadowing behavior, who becomes noticeably more reluctant to let you out of sight after a period of relatively independent behavior, may be experiencing discomfort or the early stages of vision loss. Dogs with deteriorating eyesight often compensate by staying closer to familiar people and familiar spaces, using proximity to a trusted person as a navigational anchor when their own sensory information becomes less reliable. In older dogs, increased following combined with confusion, disorientation in familiar spaces, or apparent failure to recognize routines they have known for years can be early indicators of cognitive changes worth discussing with a vet. Behavior is always saying something. The following that has been there all along is one conversation. Following that suddenly intensifies or changes quality is usually a different one. If your dog tracks your every movement but rests easily when you leave, you do not have a dog with a problem. You have a dog operating its social cognition system at full capacity, using you as the reference point through which it navigates the world. So here is what is actually happening when your dog gets up for the fourth time to follow you across the same stretch of hallway. They have identified you as the highest information entity in their environment. They have built a model of your behavior detailed enough to predict with reasonable accuracy when something worth knowing is about to happen. They are maintaining visual access to their primary information source, positioning themselves to reference you when the environment presents something uncertain, and doing all of this because something was written into their biology specifically so that they would find nearness to you rewarding rather than indifferent. Your dog is not following you because something went wrong. They are following you because you are the most interesting, most useful, and most trusted thing in their world. That is not clinginess. That is the most focused attention another species has ever evolved to direct at us, made specific and personal and pointed, as it has been for tens of thousands of years at you. Is there one person in your household your dog follows more than everyone else? Drop it in the comments and describe who it tends to be.